Now 7 o'clock, and I would like to start the meeting of the Health and Wellbeing Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being recorded. Item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Fish, who will be joining us on MS Teams, and also Georgia Boson on MS Teams. Item 2, minutes. I move that the minutes of the Health, Wellbeing, Overview and Scrutiny held on the 12th of January 2023 to be approved as a correct record. Does any member have any comments on the minutes? No? Do we all agree on those? Yep, agree. Thank you. Item 3, items of urgent business. I have not agreed to any items of urgent business. Does anyone wish to raise any points on the briefing notes that we received this month? No? Okay, thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? Nope. Brilliant, thank you. Item 5, items raised by Health Watch. Kim James, do you have any items you'd like to raise this evening?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'd like to ask you, Jane, Kim, is there anything that we should be aware of going on with Health Watch at the moment? Any complaints raising or any issues you can see coming up?
No, there isn't anything that I know of. I've not been made aware of any issues or problems or complaints.
Brilliant, thank you.
Not directly at us.
No, directly to you, thank you. Item 6, Integrated Medical Centre update. Can I ask Tiffy Hemmings from via MS Teams to present this item, please?
Good evening. Thank you for having me back again this month. So my update this month is that the 2 business cases that sit with NHSE for Purfleet and for Tilbury are still with NHSE. We haven't yet got a response, although we are working with NHSE around that to answer questions that they have around affordability. We are still progressing with the development of the Grays outline business case, and that work continues alongside work at Basildon Hospital around moving some of the services that relocated from Basildon during the COVID pandemic into Orsett Hospital. So there's a piece of work there as well. In terms of the Corringham IMWC, I'm pleased to tell you that we have now managed to start or about to start obesity services from one of the primary care rooms run by the local PCN. So there will now be a primary care service running directly on that site. And that is alongside, I'm sure many of you are aware, we've been running a respiratory hub during the winter period outside from this space as well, which is very good news for the local population. In addition to this, I can update you on the GP Fellows, which continues to successfully recruit, although it is a very slow process. We still have GPs becoming interested in this and interested in joining us, which I think you'll agree is very good news. And we intend to continue until we have managed to recruit 12. I believe we now have some started, although I can't give you the exact number at this time. In terms of the APMS contract that I updated you on last time, whereby 5 GP practices in Thurrock had been successfully bid for by a provider, I can now share with you that that provider is called Spirit Health, and we'll be taking these over in the coming months with a view to improving the quality of the service provided. That concludes the update between this month and in January.
Thank you. I'm going to throw it open to members first of all. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Apothecary.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Tiffany, for your brief update. I think I can probably speak for everybody here that it's incredibly disappointing that we still haven't got any kind of idea on those business cases, despite them having been with NHSE for a sizable amount of time now. So that's incredibly disappointing. I'm also quite disappointed to hear that the GP fellowship scheme doesn't seem to be moving maybe at the pace we would hope. I mean, yes, we might think it's good news that lots of people are interested in the scheme, but unless that actually translates into them becoming more than interested in the scheme and actually joining it, then this is a wasted exercise. So I guess my question on that would be, what are we doing to, are we reviewing that process? What are we doing to make sure that we actually are translating that interest to GPs in Thurrock? And my second question would be about this idea that services that transferred from Basildon to Orsett during the COVID pandemic are going to go back to Basildon. Could you just outline which specific services they are? Because I think in the name of transparency and the agreement that was undertaken when Orsett Hospital closure was rubber stamped by the government, I think we need to be really, really clear that none of those services that are now going back to Basildon were actually in Orsett before COVID.
Okay, I can answer the first question for you quite easily. In terms of the GP fellows, there's a huge amount of work that has been ongoing. It includes development of a purpose-built advert, if you like, with lots of individual testimonials from GPs and newer GPs working in Thurrock to try and help people become interested in this. It includes looking at and working with any group of GPs as they complete their GP training and speaking with them and trying to persuade them that this is a great place to come. That's where most of our interest has come from. And that interest is gradually being converted into applying and working out where they want to work, etc., but it's a very slow process. And it does depend on them finishing their training. So if they're still in training, they cannot proceed further. So some of the slots that we have earmarked are people that are still in training. And as soon as they finish their training, we would expect them to move forward with coming to us. We've made the roles extremely attractive, which is why we're having so much interest compared to elsewhere, for example, by offering them the opportunity to follow a personal interest as well as be a GP. So as you know, the GP fellows, they're called a fellow because they come to learn further in their specialist area, as well as do what you might call a general jobbing GP with one of the local practices. So we've been completely free effectively in terms of what they would like to do, and we will organise that training and that ability to use that skill locally according to what they want to do, and that is extremely attractive, and that's why we're managing to talk to so many people. We then have to persuade people to move to Thurrock. That's not proving too difficult, actually. We are being quite successful, and we've got some people who've been training locally who want to stay here who otherwise might not have done because of the attractiveness of the programme. So I think that will bear fruit. It is a slow process, as you say, and can be a little frustrating, but I think we just need to keep going on it, and we'll see what happens at the end of the day. I believe we will get the full 12. It's not going to happen overnight. In terms of your second question, the services that moved from Basildon on a temporary basis because we needed more space at the time was clinical haematology day therapies and rheumatology infusions, which need to go back to where they came from. Essentially, we just need to make sure we can find the space and make sure it's appropriate for the clinicians to be able to use the space that we find for them.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you for the responses. Could I just, one very quick follow-up. When do you think we'll have the 12 fellowship GPs in place?
I wouldn't like to speculate, but we will continue to recruit on an ongoing basis until we've filled all 12 slots.
Thank you. Does any other members have any other questions? No? Okay, I'll come with mine. Thank you for your report, Tiffany. First of all, can you Can you just tell me how many GPs have we got there right now, fellowship GPs working at the Coronham IMC?
I don't know how much is today, but I could come back to you. In terms of where they're working from, their base will be the Coringham IMWC, and that they will, once they've got skills in their particular area, provide appointments from that location. They could just as easily provide it to other locations. What I want you to make sure that is understood is that we don't necessarily need to have patients travelling from all over Thurrock to Corringham for particular specialist expertise that we have with a GP with special interest. We can move it to elsewhere as well. So initially it will definitely be just at Corringham, and that will be their base. There's a lovely space, I know you've been in there, on the first floor, where they can do their preparatory work, etc., as well as the clinical space downstairs. So they will be doing that, and also they will be providing appointments as general jobbing GPs at the GP practice that they're attached to for that element of their role. So not all of their work will be from the Corringham IMWC.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going back to November HOSC, and I believe we was told that a fellowship GP was going to be starting January, February. Can you confirm that person has now started?
I'm aware that one person was due to start and has had to delay because of a family bereavement. I cannot go, I believe that's the reason. I can't go into any more details on that one. I can't tell you who has and hasn't started at this time. The pipeline is looking quite healthy from the recruitment of GPs perspective, which is very difficult wherever you go. I can come back to you with exact numbers if you would like for the minutes, and I can share them with Jenny.
Yes, thank you. It's just I'm concerned that obviously at the moment we have 0 in place, so that is quite concerning. Obviously,
I can't tell you whether it's 0. I'm not sure who started or not, so I'll have to come back to you.
Right. Okay. I would have thought you would have come with that information. Unfortunately, I would have assumed that would have been something you would have had at hand. I don't know if Les can give any information on that at all.
No, I mean, it's a health matter. I wouldn't know any more than Tiffany does. I thought there was 3 in post, but that may not be correct.
Okay, can we have this clarified then? That if I keep hearing these numbers from 1 to 3. I just want to know if we've got anyone in place there.
I'll find out for you, and I'll confirm what exact stage they are at. So that's why I don't want to say the number in case I'm wrong. So I will get the absolute clarity on that and share that with you. I did ask for it, it hasn't quite come through yet.
Okay, so it's been 9 months now since the business case was put out for the other IMCs. Do we have any movement on the Tilbury IMC at all?
No.
Okay, so looking at, I'm not going to say there's not a possibility, this could all still happen. We're looking at a plan B.
So yes, as I discussed last time, we have begun doing some contingency planning, looking at the outcomes that we seek to achieve, which are related to integrated working closer to the community. And we have started considering how that might be achieved, so that if 1 or 2 of these sites are not approved, that we have an alternative and we don't lose any more time, because this is taking a very long time, as you rightly point out.
So looking back over the process, is there anything that Thurrock Council have done to hinder, or is there anything we could have done more to put this forward, to speed this up?
I don't know, because I've only been involved in the process since April of 2022. So during my tenure from April 2022, I haven't seen anything that you could have done that would have hindered it. In terms of speeding it up, I can't think of anything just now, but if I think of anything, I will let you know.
Thank you. Just the last thing I want to be very, very clear about is the services being removed from Alcester Hospital and put out into the IMCs or into the community, wherever it may be, need to match up with the services that were provided at the time of when the decision made to create these IMCs, because we don't want to lose any services by stealth that have been moved out during this period. They need to be providing services that we had during all that time that we've been working on this project. So we don't want to lose maybe an eye surgery clinic because during that period it's gone over to Southend, where if this service had happened a lot quicker and the IMCs had been built quicker, that would have remained in Thurrock.
So all the plans for contingency will look at the outcomes that we'd originally intended in terms of the services that we had originally looked at, and will seek to include those in any ongoing plan.
Okay, thank you, Pat. There is actually one last point I'd like to bring up, which is the parking situation with Coronel YMC. You may be quite aware of this, that we've had quite a lot of residents come forward regarding the staff parking down the road opposite. I think it's the Andersons. We know this is a complicated issue with the staff parking. Have we got any further with a solution where they could use a different car park?
So the recommendation for the staff is that they park in one of the two local car parks. There's one behind Morrison's and there's one just literally on the corner behind the local shopping arcade. So that is the recommendation for where they park. I will speak with Rita Takaria and make sure that we are doing our best to persuade the staff that that is where they need to go and park.
Yes, thank you, because it'll stop residents sending me photographs of the staff parking outside their house and blocking the driveways. Thank you for your report, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 7, development of a single operating model for pathology services. Can I ask Katie Arnold via MS Teams to present the items, please?
Sure. Thank you. I will bring up some slides on screen and talk you through two updates today. The first one focuses specifically for changes for pathology services, for which then also agendaed for today, I believe, is also a specific update on community diagnostic centres. So just to start with the pathology changes planned, our aim is to have across Mid and South Essex. So our aim is to move to providing one single pathology service across Mid and South Essex. At the moment, across our hospitals, it is different. We have Pathology First, who is, so at the moment, at Basildon and Southend, we have Pathology First. It is, so Pathology First started 2014, and it is a joint venture between the Trust and SynLab. And then also there is a in-house lab service at Broomfield Hospital. Our aim is to move so that we have one single service across all. Having a single pathology service, we've had some specialists in having a look at current arrangements, and from talking to key clinical stakeholders, it is clear that that a single pathology service is going to offer us specific benefits compared with current plans. Most specifically, it will offer us better value for money. It will offer us, it will provide a joined up service for patients. So a joined up service for patients, and it will simplify our model across various sites. I just want to be clear here, it isn't changing access at all. This is changing how all of the tests it is changing all of how it is changing. It is having a look to simplify and standardise laboratory processes. For here, it doesn't change access for patients. It will still be possible to get a blood test from a variety of locations. Stakeholder work has started. We are working alongside clinical teams, ICS, primary care, and also patient reps. We have surveys at the moment that are being handed out at phlebotomy clinics. Our main aim is to support staff through this, because obviously it is a period for change, especially for Broomfield staff, and there is the risk of staff losses and turnovers during this time. However, mitigating actions are in place, so staff side conversations happening, and also involving staff from early on, so that staff feel cited upon changes, and they can also input into shaping future pathology services. So our intention is to produce. So our intention will be to present the full business case to our trust board across spring. If successful, it starts then market engagement from summer, for which our aim is to complete the procurement exercise by spring 2024. So this would provide us, so all of this planning aligns to the expiry contract for Pathology First at the moment, and that is due to end 2024. So it is focusing on us having new arrangements for late 2024. There's a future programme plan shared there with all of the various steps involved. And then finally on pathology, if it is that there's questions offline after today, the team set up specific contacts here. So questions can be fielded through here, through this route. And on that note, it's probably worth pausing before I go on to the community diagnostic centres for any questions.
Thank you for that report. I will go first, because there is one question that I guess jumps out at me on this, is that now we're going to be putting all our tests in one basket, in one location. If there is any issue at that one lab, that's going to have a massive knock-on effect to all the blood tests in Essex. Are we not really narrowing down our choice?
So the work underway alongside Life Cycle is having a look at the capacity, and the estate options for various labs is only going to be decided at the point a provider will be selected. So at this point in time, it isn't decided who, but that's certainly some feedback for the team working on here, and I'm sure will be part of our evaluation for providers that during options appraisal.
Yeah, thank you. It's just one of those things that, it's always great to look at how things go when they go well, but it's always that advisory to have a look at when things don't always work out the way we want them to. Does any other members of the committee? Councillor Polly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We're very grateful that we've recently had blood testing services returned in South Ockenden, so we really do appreciate that, and we thank Steve Porter for all the efforts that he made for that to happen. We obviously are a very expanding population within Thurrock, and I think certainly it seems to be that the majority of people that are catching up with their health issues post-COVID are initially GPs are making referrals for blood testing to the majority of patients as a starting base. My own experience has been it's quite complicated to make an appointment for a blood test. When I was privileged enough in my position as counsellor to know that these services had returned to the Health at South Hockington. When I googled it to try to make an appointment for myself, it didn't offer me Hockington as an option. I had to find that it was through SwiftQ. It didn't come up as first put, and I do think that we when we're focusing on the actual service of the haematology and the phlebotomy, we also have to be mindful of the service user, of the person that's actually going to be making the blood test appointments. Invariably, they're concerned about their health because they've been sent by the doctor to have a blood test, so they would have a bit of health anxiety going on. And not everybody is as computer literate as the next person along. And I understand that we have to sort of move forward with technology, and there are still people that just want to go along and have the blood test once they've come out of the doctors. And I just wonder where First Pathology are with their patient-facing situation, please.
Oh, at the moment, as you say, blood tests are offered in Orsett Hospital, in Thurrock Community Hospital, and South Ockington started, and a few other practices. As you say, we have the online booking system of SwiftQ, and actually from our feedback from the Community Diagnostic Centre, it's been very positive about SwiftQ. However, when we started Corringham services, so a phlebotomy service at Corringham, there was a little bit of feedback about residents finding the location on SwiftQ, and we fed that back to Pathology First, who had corrected that. So I will go away and speak to Pathology First about that, because the South Ockington option should show. We can also update our online information about where services are available. Just to let you know as well, with the Thurrock Community Diagnostic Centre, we are increasing phlebotomy there. So when the Community Diagnostic Centre opens in spring 2024, it will offer extra appointments, and the service currently at Thurrock Community Hospital is booked appointments, but it is also walk-in. So if a resident does want to walk in and get their appointment, there is a facility to do that at Thurrock Community Hospital at the moment.
Councillor Salmons.
Thank you. Yes, just as a follow-up to that, I've also used SwiftQ quite a lot recently. I didn't find it that efficient, to be truthful. The appointment seemed quite delayed. In fact, so much so that it was quicker to just get in the car and to go to Thurrock Community Hospital, where you can just walk in. Now, having got there several times recently, you can actually book online, but I too couldn't find that anywhere when I was trying to book. I could see Orsett, I could see Basildon, but I couldn't actually see anywhere else. So hence I just got in the car and went, but everybody's not in that position. So it is a bit concerning because many older people don't use computers. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think if I can go back to pathology first, our team, because I think it is just worth us checking that it is extremely clear from the drop-down options exactly which sites. Yeah, just for us to be able to go back and ensure that all sites that are listed on SwiftCue, it is listed clearly. For example, when Corringham went on, it didn't say Corringham IMWC, it said something different. So it might be on there, but under a different name, which isn't clear to people. So I can take that back. Thank you for that feedback.
Just remembering Councillor Apothecary, I just want to say that, yeah, you're correct. The Corringham IMC isn't listed as the Corringham IMC on the Dropbox, so you do have to search for it differently. I can't remember exactly what it's called right now, but it is just a technical thing on there. I'm sure we can get that changed pretty quick. Councillor Apothecary.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on the issues with SwiftCue, which is that I tried to use it the other day, and the link from my GP on the letter from my GP was actually incorrect, which was unhelpful, so I fed that back to my GP. But one of the things that I found quite confusing about it is I think Thurrock locations seem to be listed under Basildon.
Okay.
It was Basildon and areas, which might be causing some confusion because we don't live in Basildon, we don't associate ourselves as living in Basildon. So although, obviously, after looking at the list, not being able to see Thurrock and then going, oh, well, maybe they've lumped us in with Basildon, I found it, that could be contributing to it. So actually a Thurrock section would be far more helpful than just sort of lumping us in with Basildon.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you for that. I'll feedback to
Thank you
team.
for that. I mean, before you go on to your second part of your report, I guess it's one of the benefits of having HOSC is that you come here to give a report on one thing and get questions on the other. So thank you on that. Thank you to pass our feedback. Yeah, if you'd like to carry on with your second part.
Thank you. So, community diagnostic centres, providing you an update since last session, which was in November. So just to recap on this, national funding available to create new community diagnostic centres, for which the aim is to increase diagnostic capacity and to have this capacity far more local to home to increase accessibility. We now have funding for Thurrock. So so at the moment, funding for Thurrock, for which the Thurrock Community Diagnostic Centre will be based specifically at a Thurrock Community Hospital site. Since funding approval, some further public engagement plans have happened, and we have spoken to over and from that it has allowed us to speak to patients, and we have got some really useful feedback from that. From the patients and residents surveyed, the themes from the feedback tended to be around appreciating different appointment times, so early mornings, evening appointments, Saturdays, Sundays, to keep the telephone booking appointment line, as well as having SwiftCue and other online apps. And in fact, we were asked to offer more booking via apps compared to some services where there's only telephone booking available at the moment. For which then finally, the last theme focused upon speeding up times for appointments, appreciating that the waiting times for diagnostic tests at the moment in some places can be significant. We also asked, because car parking car parking conversations happened, and we found that 75% travelled via car, and I guess I guess car parking has been raised beforehand about Thurrock Community Hospital, so it was really good to get some feedback about the proportion of patients travelling by car. The survey closed. So for us now, it is about summarising all of that feedback so that we can feed that into service designs. And also just wanted to say thank you for Healthwatch Thurrock, who have supported us through sessions throughout January, and have also visited Orsett Hospital for us, speaking to patients there. So thank you very much to Healthwatch Thurrock for that. Just to share next some kind of so I just wanted to share plans for community diagnostic centres across Mid and South Essex. So we have now developed 3 business cases for which, alongside the Thurrock Community Diagnostic Centre, we also have approval for Braintree as well. So our second community diagnostic centre starts there from late summer 2024. Our third business case is so our third business case has been submitted to the national team, and our third case focuses on a centre for Pitsea. We are hoping to expect a funding decision on this across spring, but at the moment our intention would be to have a large centre for Pitsea, so hoping for a positive outcome from funding for this one. Why it's in and I guess it is important to Thurrock patients for this one because it will have in it endoscopy. So it will be the closest community endoscopy facility for Thurrock, and our intention is to have 6 endoscopy rooms in here. This centre. The centre is extremely large, and it will provide services for all across South Essex. So that's going into Southend, Basildon, Brentwood and Thurrock as well, albeit there is also the Thurrock CDC. So going back to Thurrock then, focusing on Thurrock, just sharing there the services that will be in the Thurrock CDC, so bringing some services to Thurrock for the first time. So there will be a CT in the Community Diagnostic Centre, and there will be MRI. This also involves moving some of the Orsett services over into the Thurrock Community Diagnostic Centre. So there's currently 2 X-rays at Orsett, and there is 1 ultrasound. They will eventually move over. Some of the X-ray facilities at Orsett stay until other facilities convert over to Thurrock Community Site. However, ultimately, this is the start of moving Orsett services over to Thurrock Community Hospital, which is the ambition for the Grays IMWC. There will be appointments offered 7 days per week here, and they will run from 8 AM to 8 PM at night for some services. So this is, I guess, taking feedback from surveys about wanting appointments early in the day, late in the evening, and on Saturdays and Sundays. And I wanted to share some pictures today to start to kind of show you how the Community Diagnostic Centre looks. So the centre, so the Community Diagnostic Centre, it will be based exactly where Alistair Farquharson Centre is at the moment. So it is part refurbishment and it is part new build extension to here. A planning application submitted already, and we're hoping to hear back on that planning application by late April. And just to share a few more photos as to how that will look. So that will be there, Thurrock Community Diagnostic Centre entrance, and yes, photos of photos inside the building as well. So I just wanted to give a bit of a flavour as to how that Thurrock Community Diagnostic Centre will look. Our aim is to have the centre open by spring 24. We are appointing contractors at the moment, and our aim is to start construction work for late May. Thank you. Is there any questions on community diagnostic centres?
Brilliant, thank you for that, Katie. I guess when Anthony McKeever called me to say, do we want one of these centres in Thurrock, he knew I was going to jump for joy. This is going to bring so much to Thurrock, and the diagnostics are right in the heart of our society. I do worry about the traffic and the parking. As you just said, this is for the whole of southeast of Essex. It scares me. It's in a bit of a housing estate, basically. If there's any road improvements, I just don't know how it's going to cope with the amount of parking and traffic.
Yeah. So we've been working alongside design partners, and we have car parking improvements to site, which will bring extra car parking spaces. We've calculated the extra patients on site and also staff on site, and we're confident that it will offer sufficient car parking spaces. Just to be clear, I guess, the Thurrock CDC is open for all patients. However, it's the Pitsea CDC for which the Pitsea is going to offer services for South Essex because of accessibility. We're expecting most of the appointments for the Thurrock CDC will probably be from Thurrock. We are doing some work on increasing the road width internally on site. So on Thurrock Community Hospital site, it's got a very narrow road, a internal road at the moment, and our teams are working through because it cannot get large vehicles on at the moment for construction anyway. So there will be some changes to inside Thurrock Community Hospital, but we're confident that with the car parking improvement works, and all of that is also funded from the Community Diagnostic Centre, it will give us sufficient car parking spaces on site. We're also undertaking at the moment a car parking on-site survey, and that will provide us with extra evidence. We've had some questions back from planning about specific car parking spaces. So there will be extra information from a car parking survey as well. But as I say, there's been analysis done around the extra footfall on site, and we're confident that there will be sufficient car parking spaces.
Okay, thank you. I'm also very, very mindful that this is one of the possible sites for our IMC. And has this, looking, Councillor Polly just brought up the planes that we were shown. Oh, you put a plane up for it, and that doesn't... Yeah, I don't know if you haven't got the plane. We've actually got the plan out on here. Is it actually in the... It's not in the policy, is it?
So apologies, Chair, for interrupting, but I've just found in the minutes of last... I'm annoyed that we didn't spot this before Tiffany went, but Tiffany said at our last meeting, in response to a question I asked her about the Grays IMC, should the Corringham IMC... no, sorry, wrong bit. Which bit? So she says that it would be in the building where vaccinations are COVID-19 vaccinations are currently being held.
Yes.
And that is where that is the Alistair Farquharson Centre. So I'm a bit confused as to
Yeah.
where. I understand that some of the CDC is taking over some of the stuff that would have been part of the IMC, the diagnostics bit, but I'm slightly concerned about where the other bit's going.
Oh, is there for me to come in? So the Community Diagnostic Centre will be occupying Alistair Farquharson Centre. So it will take over all of that kind of centre. So the vaccination service stopped just before Christmas. So the building is empty of clinical services at the moment, and the EPOT teams are emptying the building because it's used for storage. The other services due to move over from Orset onto the Thurrock Community Hospital service site can go into either extra are going into existing buildings from better utilising space and changing locations of services in buildings across the site, or a new build element which attaches onto the Community Diagnostic Centre for outpatients. However, of course, this is all subject to funding approval and availability of capital. So, for example, the John Tallock Centre has community services at the moment, and the site will be reconfigured so that space is made in the John Tallock for some of the services coming over from Orset.
Okay, Katie, I will say that we've got some very confused faces around the chamber at the moment. Obviously, because this being a site for the IMC, which is taking up that footprint, I'm actually quite confused. I don't know if we can get some more information on this, because this contradicts the plans that we had at the last COS meeting, because now this is where diagnostics is going on. Councillor Polly, do you want to come in? Maybe you can shed some light on this.
Apologies, Katie, but I know you're here to update us on the CDC, and we're drawing you into our ongoing dialogue regarding the IMCs. I have just pulled up the planning application on my screen, and I'm looking at the red lines, which is the indication of where the new CDC or the reconfigurement of the Alistair Farquharson Centre will be. But there's also a separate red line, which I believe is where the additional 12 parking spaces are going to be lost initially, but then replaced with 32 additional parking spaces. And that, I believe, is potentially where the IMC was earmarked for. I think we as HOSC need to look at the planning application in detail and make our comments within the planning normal planning application format. But this, and I'm sorry, Katie, because I know you're here to talk about CDC, but from where I'm sitting, this looks like another confirmation to me that the IMC for Greys will not be delivered. So I'll finish that comment, but can I, on the CDCs itself, are they referral appointments? I mean, there wouldn't be any access to, like, from the urgent rapid response care nurses or the teams that are there at Long Lane. If they had a patient with a fall, I mean, very often elderly, frail people from care homes end up being taken to Basildon, to A&E, because they need a head scan, because they're on a Pixban or some sort of blood thinner, which it's not great for them. To be on a trolley in a hospital corridor for unknown lengths of time when you're scared and you're frightened and you don't understand because there's a policy that says you have to have a head scan. And we understand that's to protect that individual. I'm not saying that that policy is wrong. My question is, CDCs, will they be referral units only? Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, so the premise of a community diagnostic centre and a key kind of objective for them nationally is to split out elective care from emergency care. So the aim of them is that they are planned appointments purely to protect capacity for elective patients and also cancer pathways. So they're not traditionally used for emergency patients. We do, however, as part of the Grays IMWC master plan, intend to transfer the minor injuries unit that is at Dorset at the moment over. And so I think it's early days in terms of confirming pathways. I can certainly feed that back. But the premise of the centres is it is ring-fenced, protected diagnostic capacity for elective patients. So it's all patients that are booked in to appointments. But I can certainly take, I can certainly take that back to teams to see whether there is a benefit for patients mentioned here. Appreciate that we'll take the question about the Grays IMWC master plan back, but I just wanted to clarify, I guess, that the space that is to be used by the Thurrock Community Hospital, by the Thurrock Community Diagnostic Centre and the additional car parking space doesn't conflict alongside plans for the Grays IMWC. It still allows capacity and space for all of the other services from Dorset Hospital planned to move over. It's part of the overall master planning for the site and doesn't conflict alongside the wider Grays IMWC plans. I hope that was clearer than my update before.
Thank you, Katie. I understand where you're coming from. This is an ongoing conversation, dialogue that we have as regards the services and where they're going to be delivered and whether there is a new building. But again, that's for us to take up another time. And I do thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I guess, I've always had this fear that, I think I stated that the Thurrock Medical Centre was going to be like a Doctor Who's TARDIS, where you think it's going to be bigger and you could get a lot more on there. I think it's now quickly turning into a black hole that's going to consume everything to an infinite point. I just don't see, looking at the plans that I just see on your laptop, it seems to be the same footprint as the IMC. So I'm confused. And we've also got the minor injuries unit going there as well. We're definitely going to have a problem with fitting that in with the traffic side of it all as well. Councillor Pothecary.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Katie, for the presentation. And I think, we should probably acknowledge that the CDCs sound like a really positive improvement and addition, hopefully, to the sort of capacity for diagnostic care in Thurrock and obviously along with the rest of Essex. What I do have a couple of questions about the proposed PITSI CDC. So one would be, if we're thinking that that's going to have the endoscopy service that's sort of the nearest community one for Thurrock residents. I'm just wondering where in PITSI it's going to be located. I don't think I know of a bus that goes to PITSI from Grays off the top of my head, but we do obviously have very good train links, so if it's going to be somewhere near the train station, then that would be incredibly helpful. And it does also make me just question where the closest endoscopy service currently is located, if PITSI would be our closest, or is that just in the community, through the community centre rather than at the hospital?
Yeah. So the Pitsea location has got to be confidential at the moment because it has other services in there. So unfortunately, I can't share today exactly where it is, but it is in a central location in Pitsea. It was chosen because of accessibility. We've done analysis around location, and residents can get there by car. So 850,000 residents can get there by car across 30 minutes, and it's also got good transport links for local people in Pitsea and Basildon, and there is the train station nearby. So I can't share exact location at the moment, but hopefully I can do shortly. But yes, it's going through a approval process in terms of the building. In terms of Thurrock residents, the community endoscopy facilities available in Mid and South Essex at the moment there are two small practices. There's one in Eastwood, there is one in Southend, and there is a small community endoscopy practice across Braintree Community Hospital. So there isn't a community endoscopy facility currently close by for Thurrock. So Thurrock residents would go to Basildon Hospital at the moment. This endoscopy unit provides extra capacity. So we are really challenged in terms of endoscopy times at the moment. So performance against 6-week endoscopy waits and also cancer pathways are extremely challenged. So this extra endoscopy capacity provides us with new facilities in order to shorten specific waits for endoscopy. So for Thurrock residents, they're likely to go to Basildon Hospital at the moment. They will have the option of going to Basildon Hospital or going to a Pitsea location.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Katie, and thank you for just confirming that Thurrock residents would still have that that choice, because for some residents, Basildon is going to be more convenient than Pitsea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. While I've got Tiffany Hemmings is still on MS Teams, I wonder if Tiffany could ask, well, after what we've just heard, is she aware of where these services are going to fit in? Obviously, it's going to conflict with the IMC project. I don't know if Tiffany's got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've been listening in the background. So I can confirm what Katie says, that the two projects are completely complementary and designed to be such so that the CDC can be utilised by the services there. So you might go for an outpatient appointment to the same place, for example, or you might go for something else. So the plans do allow for both elements to be on the same footprint total, with the CDC essentially where the Alistair Farquharson building is now, and the other parts in various points around the site, depending on which element it is.
So we're not talking about the diagnostic centre taking over the footprint of where the IMC was going to be. We're saying that the IMC would actually be a purpose-built building. It'll be separated around the outskirts of the hospital as it stands at the moment.
So as it stands, the various buildings that are there, the plan is to repurpose several of them with some new builds as well, in order to house successfully all the elements of the IMWC that we wish to put into the Grays site, including the CDC.
First of all, Councillor Polly, then Councillor Poffley and Councillor
I'd like to see some costings on the CDC. We're putting a business case for the Pitsea one. We've got funding for the Thurrock one. These planning applications, and I'm just wondering I'd like to see some comparables to what the IMC costings and that are. I'm not asking for them, obviously, this evening, but if we could perhaps have a look at some of those, and I think that'd be helpful for HOSC to understand.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea to have the costings brought into HOSC. Councillor Puffcarry.
Thank you, Chair. So just trying to now piece together the new pieces of information that we've got. When the IMCs or IMWCs were first proposed, the idea was that they were purpose-built buildings that would bring together care in kind of a one-stop shop. But what Grays is going to get is services flung across an existing site in repurposed buildings with no actual coherence. Is that correct? Because that's what is being described.
That is not correct. They will be in buildings that the internal elements are completely purpose designed for the services that are going into them, and the external shell of the building will be completely refurbished. So that's what it will be, and it will be in the appropriate location on the site for the service. There's quite a lot of services coming into the site, so they're not flung across the site at all. They're in multiple buildings that are adjacent to each other along the site.
I guess the bottom line is that as long as we're providing these services and they're there and they work, it's not if they're 20 foot apart. I know it's not what was promised, and I do agree with you. As you know, I've kicked off about this many times. I just want to get an IMC there. I just want to get these services provided in our community. Councillor Piccolo. You have to nick my mic.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm a little bit out of sequence here. It's just that I had a thought come to me while this discussion's going on about the earlier matter about the blood tests and everything. And whilst I don't expect an answer now, with modern technology, you can understand how doctors can't book blood tests and whatever else it is in the surgery. They've got more important things to do. But with technology as it is now, is it possible to have a terminal in the doctor's surgery where the patient can, after he's been saying you need a blood test, can actually go out and book the blood test in the doctor's surgery while they're there, while they've got time to go through, check the calendars, check the diaries, and whatever else it is. And there may be, I don't know how many blood tests a doctor does in a day or issues in a day, but it may well be that it's at a time when the surgery might be a bit quiet, and if someone needs a little bit of help, there may actually be someone in the surgery that can give them a hand as well. So it's only a thought. It may get over the problem of, especially for the elderly people and people who need help to do it, is they can actually book their blood test when they see the doctor, but when they've got time to go through and check their diaries and see when it's available. So it's just something for possibly you could look into.
Absolutely.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that concludes your report. Is it the case? Is that right?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was great seeing you again. Thank you, Katie.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, item 8, domiciliary, I can't say the word, domiciliary care. I do apologise. Yeah, that's the one. And unpaid care support. Can I ask Catherine Wilson via MS Teams to present the item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My report this evening is around our domiciliary care contracts and our unpaid carers information, advice and support contract, explaining why we're seeking to extend those contracts. So as you will have seen from my report, if we start with domiciliary care, there are two main reasons for wanting to extend. The first is to continue to stabilise the market. I'm sure members will be aware, of course, that our care providers throughout the pandemic worked exceptionally hard, whether it was domiciliary care, residential care, and it's taken its toll. And so therefore we want to ensure that we are able to stabilise the market. And again, I think members will be aware that that is one of our key corporate risks, that we need to maintain a stable care market. The second reason for wanting to extend is to allow time for our transformation agenda. So you will be aware of our further case for change, looking at how we change the way people are supported in their own homes. We started to work on this before the pandemic with the creation of wellbeing teams, looking at a new model of integrated, flexible and person-centred care. Obviously, as the pandemic came into being, we weren't able to pursue that as much as we wanted to. And so what we want to do now is be able to work on the evaluation of the wellbeing teams and that approach, design an approach in consultation with people with lived experience of services and with partners, and to look at creating a really holistic response for people. That is laid out as a strategic direction in Chapter 8 of the Further Case for Change. And I've detailed in the report some of the elements around that, really, as I say, looking at very person-centred, individualised support for people in their own homes. So both of those elements have led us to think that extending the contracts for 2 years will give us time to do that, to stabilise the market and to ensure that we're able to redesign the service. It's for domiciliary care, it is 4 contracts. So our 2 procured providers who are currently in place, our out of hours contract, which provides care and support for people overnight in their own homes, visiting them through the night, and also our bridging service, which supports a timely discharge from hospital for patients returning home. As you will note from the financial implications, the budget is there, is built in, because obviously we would have to provide those services if we went out to tender or if we extended the contract. So the budget is built into, is there for the domiciliary care provision. And also we have within the base budget available resources for any fee uplift that we would want to be awarding to our domiciliary care providers. There's currently a consultation that's being undertaken. I think that's just about come to an end, and there is some additional resource there for a fee uplift if that's what is decided upon. Any fee uplift would need the approval of Essex Commissioners, of course, and our Section 151 officer. So that relates to the domiciliary care, and then our unpaid carers information advice and support service it provides all of those things for carers. And as you will know, throughout the pandemic, the number of carers went up significantly across the country, but also in Essex, in Thurrock. And so we want to extend the contract by 20 months to enable that response to continue to carers, and to be able to look at how we are able to support the organisation to undertake carers assessments on the local authority's behalf. This is something that carers have said that they would welcome, so that they have a consistent approach from the support that they receive and an assessment being undertaken. And it will also maintain the stability, of course, of the service. And again, the funding for that is within the budget, as we would need to provide that service anyway, as all of the services I've referred to this evening are statutory services. I think that's it, Chair, and if there are any questions.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for this. I understand that you've gone over this in so much detail and taken on recommendations from a wider area. Yeah, I see the common sense approach to extending this. With the market pressures and everything that's going on at the moment, I don't really see any objection to it myself on here. Also, I just want to say, when it comes to the unpaid carers, since we had the Wellbeing meeting a while ago, I think it highlighted it to myself how many younger people there are that are caring for an adult that have gone undetected. And I think, you know, something we can do as councillors is to raise that profile and to look out and try and identify these unpaid carers and the younger people that are looking out. But yeah, I completely understand the reason and the rationale behind this. I don't know if any members have any comments. No? Okay. Well, we can move straight forward to the recommendations, which were... Oh, Councillor Puffkey. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, thank you. So recommendation 1.1, that the Health, Wellbeing, Overview and Scrutiny Committee agree the content and the approach within the report. Do we agree that? Agreed? 1.2, the Health, Wellbeing, Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommend to Cabinet and agree the proposal outlined in the report. Do we agree? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 9, renewing the contracts for care and home supported accommodation providers. Can I ask Louise Boson to present the item, please?
Excuse me, Chair, just before we do that, I just need to inform you of a very slight change to recommendation 1.2
Right,
as a
okay.
consequence of advice received at informal cabinet on Monday evening. They wished for the recommendation to include, after delegation to the 151 officer and commissioners, consultation with portfolio holder to also say, along with the corporate director for adults housing and health, and we have made that addition, but it's too late to change this report, so just bear that in mind when you agree or disagree with the recommendations.
Okay, did you all hear that and understand that? Do we all agree that? Agreed? Yep.
I just need a bit of clarification, sorry. So this will be in consultation with our director? Yeah.
Yeah, it's what we've always done, but because we had to change it for the 151, we missed that bit off, so it's just added that back in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Billingham. I think that's very pertinent and needed to be done, so thank you for bringing it to us.
I take credit for it, but...
Thank you.
Yeah, we absolutely. Well done.
So, my report seeks a waiver from the constitutional requirement to carry out a competitive tender for the provision of the residential and supported accommodation contracts. Thurrock historically has never tendered our residential contracts. Largely that's due to the choice directive being the primary direction that we have to take. So the main choice is the choice of the individual and where there is availability. We also have a very small care market in Thurrock. We only have 12 older people homes and about 20, 25 working age adult homes, but they're very small in size. Because of that limited market and the fact that we contract with every care home within the borough, the requirement to tender in some other authorities who may have a two-tier care home system, one which accepts local authority rates and one which doesn't. That's maybe why some other local authorities may have chosen to tender. Throughout the Eastern region, there's only 1 or 2 out of the 12 local authorities who have chosen to undertake competitive tender exercises. Our current contracts expire on the 31st of August. So this gives us time to get the new specification in place. It won't be drastically changed from what it is now, but at each reiteration of the contract, we learn things from the previous few years that we can then amend and adapt for the forthcoming contract period. We're seeking a contractual period of 5 years plus a 24-month extension period. We are not in any way obligated to continue for that the entire period of that contract. The contracts always have a 6-month termination clause included in them, so that doesn't mean that we're tied in. So if at any time we thought this was no longer the correct market approach for Thurrock, we can come out of those contracts with a 6-month notice period. Our rates are very low, and tendering is likely to add cost for that. It's a time-consuming exercise, and it costs quite a lot of money to actually pull a tender together. Lots of our smaller care homes wouldn't have the ability to do that, so many would have to pay an external contractor to support them with their tender, so that would potentially add cost to the rates that we pay. In the region, we are currently 10th and 11th of the rates that we pay throughout the Eastern region. As Catherine mentioned, there is we've just ended our fee consultation, so there is an uplift that's about to be applied to that. What that will be, the final decision hasn't yet been made. Although our rates are very low in Thurrock, our quality ratings are much higher than the national average. We're currently we've got about 92% of our residential providers are currently rated good or excellent following a Thurrock Council quality compliance visit, and that is quite a high benchmark. We've got extremely good relationships with our providers. Being a small unitary authority, we've been praised periodically throughout the pandemic and beyond for our relationship, our supportive approach. You know, we share lots of information with our providers. We're always on the end of the phone if they need us, support, guidance. So although our rates are low, we maintain quality really well in the borough. We've always had a really proactive approach to monitoring, but not an adversarial approach. We go in, we'll tell you what the issues are, but we'll also support you to put them right. And I think that's allowed us to have those positive provider relationships. So my report is seeking, as I say, to waiver the requirement to tender, and then it's also, as Les mentioned, asking for delegated authority to be given to the Section 151 officer, commissioners, the Director of Adult Social Services and the portfolio holder, Councillor Arnold. I think that's it from me. Have I missed anything? Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Apothecary.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Louise and Les and everyone else who's been involved in putting the report together. That was a really helpful bit of narrative you gave us there about why tendering isn't necessarily going to be the most, why it would be problematic to tender. I have to admit, I read this report and I was like, so tendering's bad, but I'm not entirely sure why. So that was really, really helpful explanation. Thank you. One of the things I did want to just ask is, obviously there are some local authorities that have chosen to go down the tendering route. Are they not subject to the same, my question was, are they not subject to the same kind of choice agenda as us? And then I've got a second question around where we place people, because it says on page 18 of the report that we're placing about 60% of people within the borough and 40% are being placed outside. So, and that can be for a variety of reasons. They might have chosen to be nearer to family and friends somewhere else, which is totally understandable. I'm just wondering, do we have any idea of the breakdown of that 40% on kind of choice versus necessity?
I would say very little of it would be necessity, because we very rarely, we have enough vacancies to meet our demand in Thurrock. We manage our availability quite well. So I would say it would either be usually choice, as you've said, because of being near to a family member, or often it's because for one reason or another people, it's not a good idea for them to remain in Thurrock. That can often be because they've got in with the wrong sorts of people. They may have substance misuse issues, and actually it's better for them to be located outside of the borough so that they can make better relationships with perhaps people that are not going to be engaging in those sort of activities and may hinder their own process in any sort of rehabilitation. And the other part was, sorry, about why?
Sorry, it was just about sort of, because, you know, it's been presented, the report presents, and your explanation was sort of like tendering's really problematic in this, to provide this type of service because of, you know, various different things to do with care agenda and stuff like that, choice agenda. But you did also say that some local authorities have chosen to go down that route, and I'm just wondering, are they not bound by the same kind of limitations as us?
Yep, they are, but I think in a lot of boroughs, you have, in more affluent boroughs, you have sort of almost a two-tier care home system, and you have what would be private care homes, which are funded by private fee payers, and then you have local authority homes, which are funded by the local authority, and the private homes don't tend to accept local authority rates. So the only way that we would make a placement in those sorts of homes would be that we would pay what we call our local authority rate, and then a family member or the individual themselves would have to top up the difference out of their own money. So in Thurrock, we don't have that sort of two-tier system.
Okay, thank you, that's really helpful, thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Polly.
Thank you very much for the report. And there's some good news in here, you know, with the service user, with that satisfaction level is a credit to our services here in Thurrock and to our carers and the people that have worked tirelessly over the COVID. Yeah, I know from personal experience that despite media reports to the contrary, there was a lot of care homes that treated those people like their own relatives, which was amazing to see under very difficult circumstances. That then gives me a concern that if we're going out to tender, not every care home has the same ethos, because if I live in my house and Councillor Salmon lives in the house, we're going to live different ways and not one size fits all. Is there any concern or nervousness that a conglomerate would come in and just tender for all the care facilities in, like for the older people's care? We'd only have one provider, so that we'd end up with a corporate type of care home rather than a sort of bespoke.
Les may want to come in on this as well, but I would say that's highly unlikely because of the fact that they're all owned, but we've only got one care home owner for our older people market who owns more than one care home, and that's Rumbled Homes. They do own 4 of them. The rest are all owned by separate individuals, so the likelihood of them all being sold onto one organisation would be very low. Do you want to add anything, Les?
Yeah, a couple of things really. I mean, first thing is to say publicly that the relationship we have with providers is magnificent, but that's by and large due to Louise and her incredible team, who have spent a very long time establishing those relationships, and we are trusted, and we trust in equal measure our care homes, and they are by and large doing a fantastic job. So that creates a fairly unique market in Thurrock, and we've been able to protect that market traditionally through planning as much as anything else. So we've always maintained in Thurrock that we're not interested in these sort of mega homes, these kind of 150 bedded units, which tend to be what's being built by corporate owners, unless they're going to build very expensive smaller homes where you're paying £1,200–1,500 a week. But again, there isn't a market for that here. So insofar as we can be, I think we're protected against that kind of development in Thurrock, and I think we've benefited from it.
Councillor Salmons.
Can I just ask one question? So the homes that you're currently funding, if they didn't win tenders, what would happen? Would they still be funded, or would residents be expected to move?
So what would happen is, because we wouldn't be allowed to restrict choice, we wouldn't be allowed to do that. So what would happen is, we would have to give the individuals the rate that we could purchase care for within Thurrock, and then they could then purchase care from someone who hadn't submitted a tender, but we would only pay the rates that we've agreed through that tender process. So if that home decided they were going to charge more than that, that would be a matter between the individual and themselves. So we couldn't restrict choice. So again, it's why tendering would almost be a waste of time, because we couldn't restrict the choice anyway, and it just means potentially that our residents may be being asked to pay a higher top-up than we thought was reasonable. Or
so if a home then decides they're going to be a bit more upmarket and raise their fees, the people that are currently living there, such as dementia patients, would their relatives end up moving them to somewhere else if they couldn't afford the top-up? Or would you?
I think moving people would be highly unlikely and controversial. What they may do is say for new residents, they may start to ask for a higher rate. I think to move people, especially an older person with dementia that you've mentioned, can be really controversial and can have a terrible impact on their cognition and they can really go backwards quickly if you move someone. So I think any move of that nature would be extremely unlikely.
Thank you.
But I would also like, I'm sorry if I'm overstepping the mark, but I just wanted to agree with you completely, Councillor Polly, when you said how wonderful all our care staff. I think the carers throughout the country were amazing, but in Thurrock, they were amazing. So I'm sorry if I shouldn't have said that, but I really completely agree with you, and thank you for saying that.
If you don't mind, I'll just add on, I mean, not just our residential care staff, our care staff that supported those people in the community. I'm getting emotional myself. They were amazing.
Some of our care home staff actually locked down in the home and moved into the home and locked down to protect their residents, because as you said, they think they're like their family. They're not like people they support. They don't view them like that. Thank you.
Could I just ask a question? Sorry.
Go on, Councillor Foley.
We're focusing quite a lot on the elderly care and that, but obviously there are other adults with learning difficulties, and their needs become more complex sometimes as they age as well. Certain disabilities such as perhaps Downs or something like that, it can get early onset dementia. Where are they supported? Because I'm not quite sure with the ICB where funding, because one of the things we do have a little bit of a under provision for in Thurrock is the good nursing home, isn't it? And it's that transition from care home to or supported living to then carry on with somebody's care in the same environment. If I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, I think it is a gap. There's becoming a gap in that, as you've said, people are living longer now. So people with learning disabilities historically used to pass away sadly at a much younger age. These people are living much longer now, which is wonderful. But it does mean as they age, some of them are then developing mobility issues and that sort of thing, which are very difficult to support in the working age adult homes, because that's not what they're geared up to do. So what we do have locally, a very small older person's home. It's 15 beds. You don't build 15-bedded older people care homes any longer. but it's an older home, and I'll try and use that for some of those people because they're able to support those mobility needs, but in a much smaller, more homely environment that isn't daunting. And, you know, we've got, our largest home is 87 beds. I would never suggest putting someone into a home of that size, but we have different, that's our largest one, and as I say, our smallest one is 15 beds, so we have got but that's a good home to use for those type of clients whose needs are changing. But you are right, it is becoming, because we've been so successful in these people living longer, it does mean that they're developing older adult needs.
Sorry, Chair, I'm getting into a conversation here. Again, that's a compliment to the care that they because of their contentment and their general and their well-being. So again, I've only got compliments for your staff. Thank you.
Councillor Polly, you sure you're finished now? Yeah. No, I'd like to echo a lot of the comments that have come across. Looking back over the COVID pandemic, when we did the lockdowns, and obviously the care homes were in a longer situation than what we were. Yeah, hats off to all the staff there. It was incredible. I do believe that we've got a special relationship with our care providers at the moment, and I'd hope that HOSC, we can agree to these recommendations on this. We go through them. So,
sorry, Chair, can I just, and I'm sure this will be in the planning, and I'm sure you will have already taken it in. Obviously, with the position the council is in, and because of the media being mischievous, I just want the comms on this be really clear that we're not selling off care homes. We do not want to start bringing fear into vulnerable people and mischief making being done. So if I could just ask for that to be...
It would be extraordinary if anyone interpreted like that. This is about maintaining the market we have in the best way possible without forcing some of our smaller providers to have to involve themselves in a lengthy and expensive process. So I can't believe it could be misinterpreted in that way, but certainly we can work on some comms to just say it's good news. Yeah, no, absolutely.
oh no, Councillor Pothecary.
I'm really sorry, but I do have a question about the recommendations. I think I must have slightly misread them earlier. So 1.3, that HOSC endorse the changes to an agreement of fees, e.g.
Is that Catherine's paper? I was going to say, I thought we only had two.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Apologies. I was getting a bit confused there. Thank you.
Are we ready? Yeah. Okay, recommendations. 1.1. That HOSC endorses to waiver from the consultation requirement for competitive tendering for provisions of care home services for older people, working age adults and supported accommodation, and approve a single sourcing arrangement for new contracts for the care home and supported accommodation placements commissioned by the council. Agreed? Agreed? Yeah. 1.2. The HOSC endorses a delegation to the S51, let's get this right away, S151 officer and commissioners in consultation with the portfolio holder and the authority to award contracts for care home and supported accommodation services to meet the assessed needs and the preferences of the older people and the working age adults. And director. Agreed.
I'm really confused. So I was right, it is this paper, and it's 1.3, endorses to changes in agreement of fees. But on page 19, but... It's under recommendations, it's 1.3, and I don't know what those fees are, because apologies if I've missed something and I'm being really dense. I don't know what those fees are. I don't know where they are.
Fees are on page 21.
Yeah, they're the fees for 2022. I don't think they say what the fees are. I don't think there's a change in fees in this paper discussed, apart from in the recommendation, 1.3. Sorry, I should have spotted it earlier, but...
I went on
messed with your
annual leave, so
paper.
someone else had to amend my paper in my absence last week, and so someone added these in, and then we've had to remove, so I don't know how 1.3 got added. That's definitely not in the final
It shouldn't
paper.
be there.
Should not be in there.
It's the two recommendations you have, so ignore that one.
The budget, Councillor Ralph. Sorry, I forgot your name there for a moment. No, that's the budget on page 23, isn't it? And then it says the fees haven't been agreed, it says. In the... So the recommendation is on 19 and then 23.
Okay, so this does seem to be a crossover of the papers. I think we're just going to adjourn for 5 minutes.
1.3 is saying that you agreed to any annual uplift that we would give, but that annual uplift hasn't been published yet. So I don't know how you could be agreeing to something where it isn't there. So where that got added, I don't know, but I can only assume that it's an error. So can we check that and then get back? So if you agree with the two recommendations, and then we'll double check that addition, and if we need to, we'll come back to you with a correction. Is that okay?
I think we could agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. 1.1.2.
Because we will at some point have to bring back, I guess, a paper
Yeah.
about fee uplift. So
But we'd need to know
that anyway. So
what it is.
And thank you for
agree.
pointing that, because that was...
I was going
you
mad.
I
for a
thought you was going
moment.
mad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I asked now. We nearly got away with that, didn't we?
Sorry.
But never mind.
Thank you, Les, for the clarification, though.
Okay, so we've agreed the 1.2. Agreed.
And 1.13
And 1 point
is
is stricken from
Is
record
with-
till further
is
information.
withdrawn, yeah.
Okay, so item 10, the report of Cabinet Member for Adults and Health. Can I please welcome Councillor Arnold to the meeting and ask her to present her item, please. Okay, we're just going to take a break for 5 minutes. We're just going to get some mics working. Okay, you ready, Councillor Arnold? Thank you.
Yes, it's working now. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to present this report to HOSC. And my apologies to everyone for not being able to do it at the last meeting.
Can I just stop you quickly? For some reason, the camera is well off of Councillor Arnold.
Hello? Yeah? Shall I? Look, if I move up, is that better? Yeah? So, Thurrock has the second lowest spend on adult social care in the region, but that still equates to about 1/3 of the overall council budget being spent on adult social care for around 165,000 people living in Thurrock. And that sounds good until we really focus in and realise that 50% of that budget is spent on under 2,000 residents and a further 35% on less than 11,000 people. So that's 85% of our budget spent on just 7% of Thurrock's population, leaving only 15% to be spent on the remaining 93% of people living in Thurrock. So acute care packages are incredibly expensive and likewise incredibly necessary to support our most vulnerable 7% of residents with the most complex care needs. And post-COVID, with early discharge from hospital, late diagnosis and late treatment for life-threatening illnesses, staff shortages, pay rises, inflation increases on supply and demand all add up to additional budget pressures. And any reduction in service levels to those most vulnerable residents would carry enormous risk and isn't one that we want to be doing. And so this is why Thurrock's transformation programme is vital, so that we can intervene earlier and support those at risk sooner and better to help prevent them developing more complex illnesses, helping residents stay healthier for longer through good primary preventative care and thus helping us manage budget pressures. Thanks to officers like Ian Wake, Les Billingham, Joe Broadbent, Catherine, Kerry Armstrong, Louise and their teams, Thurrock is a leader in public health and transformation of healthcare in Essex. And I think we talk about hidden carers. I think some of our own staff are hidden carers from both sides of that coin, from not only with in their own family, but for us and all those extra things that they do to go and beyond for Thurrock residents, and they should be thanked immensely for that. The additional social care strategy, the adult social care strategy, Better Care Together strategy, and the case of further change recognise the need for integrated care, alliance working, community-based workforce, and most of all, how an engaged and empowered community can help deliver a much-needed, improved and human learning, holistic, place-based approach to integrated care systems. Bit of a mouthful, but if you kind of look at that, it's an incredible way of working, so much better for individuals. The Health and Wellbeing Strategy Refresh, one of the 2 top-tier umbrella strategies that all directorate and service strategies feed into, built by health population data collected and collated by our public health team, not to just inform Thurrock, but also to inform Mid-South Essex. And you can see at pages 58 to 60 how the domains fit across all directorates. Both these strategies were written and informing the Mid-South Essex Integrated Care Board and Integrated Care Partnership before they had completed and submitted their own strategies. Thurrock is recognised by health partners and stakeholders as leaders in vision and innovation. 2022 to 2023 saw public health beginning to exit the COVID crisis that needs no explanation, and the need for a catch-up year to try to collect and collate data to inform healthcare partners and our own social care teams on the changes to our nation's health and to gain focus on areas of need. That is ongoing and necessary, and hence the need to extend some contracts for a year to give time to understand and embed those changes into new care provision that we procure. And as you've seen, we need to manage our budget and be mindful of future effects that may cause pressure on those budgets, such as social care charging reform and the potential increase in eligibility assessments, the fair cost of care and market sustainability that I'm sure Catherine will talk about later. We need transformation now more than ever. Wellbeing teams with holistic arms wrapped around individual residents, reducing the doors that they have to knock on, or let's face it, sometimes braying and beating on them to be heard or listened to, constantly repeating themselves to different professionals for assessment after assessment, now being held within a team of professionals that talk to each other and work from the same one assessment. Community-led support teams with a human learning system approach, supporting residents in the way we as individuals need, and not just for medical care but for mental health too. Transformation doesn't just benefit residents, it's for staff too. With high turnover of frontline care and social workers, an ageing, retiring population in work that is not attracting younger people to pursue work in this area, these are national problems and not just Thurrock's. But the transformation programme offers social worker apprenticeships, upskilling and the opportunity for vocational studies that allow people to work and grow in their expertise and career. This has led Thurrock to have one of the lowest turnover rates of social workers in England and allows staff to build working relationships with residents and each other and build a sense of both community and job satisfaction. For my own part in this, through being chair of the Health and Wellbeing Committee and vice chair of the Mid and South Essex Integrated Care Partnership, I've looked for opportunities to embed how important community and charitable organisations are to preventative care and raise their profile to healthcare professionals. I've networked, signposted, facilitated and tried to match the needs of those wanting to help and support their community to those professionals that can support them in that and gain much help and needed for others too. I can see that the NHS are incredibly good at the firefighting and the keeping us all alive stuff. And likewise, the local authority are incredibly good at the social and preventative care. I try to stop the wheel being reinvented and repeated and make the two look towards each other's strengths and the strengths available within their communities and lean on each other, sharing the workload and the budgets more. And I will continue to do that, and I'll continue to work closely with Tiffany and officers to drive better healthcare for all residents right across Thurrock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a very comprehensive report we have in front of us. First of all, I think for me personally going through this, I need to separate what you can't be held responsible for. There's a lot of stuff that's gone on behind the scenes with IMCs, and there are questions that I could ask you about the IMCs. We've heard it is such a fluid situation that I don't know if there's even any point in me asking you those questions. I think we've gone through something today where the latest information that was brought to us didn't really seem to fit in with what we believed again. So I think it keeps changing every minute, so we need to keep on top of that. I will say, from my side of it as a portfolio holder, I've asked you questions, you've come back to me on them. As a whole holistic approach that we're doing in Thurrock, I'm over the moon with it. We don't always get it right. We do get individual cases where we need to go the extra mile to help people. And one of the things I do want to highlight is in the report we've got about the mental health. So on page 35, 4.4, the team will work with a therapeutic way supporting people to find solutions to prevent loss of tendencies. This is when people sort of become ill or with problems with their mental health. In discussions, I understand we've got Thurrock First that can go to, so when someone goes to the doctors and they've got mental health problems, they're not automatically being signposted to Thurrock First for help, are they?
Les might know that better than me. I mean, there's no reason at all why we can't try and improve the comms around that Thurrock First service. The people within Thurrock First are an absolute minefield of information, of being able to signpost and give people that immediate link into help. So, yeah, something like a mental health issue where it starts to affect your home life and your ability to pay your bills and things like that. By connecting in with the wellbeing teams through Thurrock First or through a local area coordinator or through your counsellor, directing you into that, we not only do we have those teams, but you also have the, and I need to get this in the right order, the urgent community response teams that have a wealth of professionals, from paramedics to mental health to social workers, all coming in immediately to support that person and make sure that they don't fall through that net and that they keep their tenancies in their homes.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I think, yeah, definitely, Les, if we could get something out, because what I've seen with my own residents, when they've come to me when they've got rent arrears or something like that, it's because with mental health, it's something they can't cope dealing with. And if we had these sort of maybe posters or anything, social media stuff, to say that Thurrock First is there to help them, along with medication and doctors and all that, that they can go there and get signposted there.
Okay, I think it's important to understand, though, that nothing is a panacea. So Thurrock First is primarily a first point of contact for people who require adult social care, community health or mental health services. It has all three of those things there. But with a lot of mental health services, if the referral comes in through the GP, they'll refer them directly into Grace Hall. So they wouldn't necessarily go anywhere near Thurrock First, and nor would they need to, because the GP can broker that appointment, make sure it's set up, make sure that that they're referred in the correct way. So absolutely nothing to stop us trying to increase the accessibility of Thurrock First to people in that situation. But I would say that, and it's a bit about what Councillor Arnold just said, an awful lot of mental health conditions come to us through our community work. So local area coordinators particularly pick up an awful lot of I was going to say low-level mental health. It's low-level in terms of the fact that it isn't an enduring mental illness, but it's a personality disorder, or it's people behaving with great anxiety or substance misusing, which often then impacts on their accommodation. So the local area coordinator often will go straight into that situation, will support the person to help themselves, but will liaise between housing, health, social care and others. The community-led support teams that Councillor Arnold's described as well are starting to do that far more. So rather than having all our social workers sitting up in the civic offices when it was open, we got them out into the community. They hold things like talking shops now, which are open surgeries in supermarkets, in community centres, wherever. And we pick up an awful lot of direct referral through that. There will always be people that slip through the net, and they're kind of the people that will come to you because they also see members as a way of accessing services, and that's quite right and proper. And just to say one thing about that in terms of that multidisciplinary approach, we're currently doing an experiment, as they're called in human learning systems language, looking at pulling together a whole range of different services into one multidisciplinary team that can deal with the complexity that is, it's not uniquely mental health, it's not uniquely substance abuse, it's a range of different complications that lead to people leading quite chaotic lifestyles. And they'll go through several doors and they'll never quite get the right answer, and they won't engage often, which is another problem. So we're trying to look at it in the round, we're trying to look at it across council, but also across services with partners, and bring together a single approach that can deal with that complexity of that entire lifestyle and start to find some good solutions for people. Because what we know is that where you live and having stable accommodation is fundamental to any kind of improvement. So there's a focus on stabilising that accommodation, preventing people from being evicted, because that used to happen and that just exacerbates the problem, but also trying to deal with that deep complexity because people won't often engage, and it is because of a whole range of different things that have happened to them that bring them to that point in their life where they've kind of lost hope, really. So we're looking at that in the round, and we're trying to do something much more holistically there as well. So very much on the case, but mental health is a national issue. It's a massively increasing demand profile because of COVID and post-COVID reactions. So again, you said it earlier yourself, we don't always get it right, and we don't always have all the answers, but we are working towards that.
Thank you, Les. Going back to my next point. This is about the Thurrock Carers Service. So in the report on page 43, 10.6, this is about the dedicated presence within the Grace Hub and Shopping Centre. I just wonder, obviously, this is very Grace Central. Is there any opportunity where we could maybe use maybe the Coronel YMC or somewhere in Tilbury that we could actually roll this out so these carers get support everywhere? I know we've got the virtual WhatsApp group, but having this as a wider scoping coverall, I don't know if there's any thoughts on that.
No, I mean, I think you're right. It's an online service as well, and WhatsApp. It depends, I suppose, on the age group that you're dealing with and trying to connect with. So there is a variety of options. And again, I mean, I'm going to keep singing their praises, but local area coordinators, they pick up carers in the community. In fact, I went out with one coordinator for my area just to sort of get an update on how it was going, and every time she came to somebody she said, now do you know anyone that's caring for anyone at home? And she asked the people in the church, she asked people in the hall, so they really do pick up, and then they can connect within their own support mechanisms within their own communities. I see local area coordinators as like our diamonds. We wouldn't survive without them, I don't think. We wouldn't have such a good sort of record of care, I think, without them.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think our local one was Christine Searle. I think it was, fantastic. And the work that they do, connecting the dots, and that's what they do. They connect the dots and feed it out. Just my only other question was going to be about the IMCs, but I think we've sort of covered that. Just one thing on the IMCs. I asked the question of the officers, do you see anything that we could have done anything differently to speed this through?
I'm a bit like Tiffany in that I've come to it at a later stage, and we go round in circles sometimes, don't we, Les, trying to untangle the myriad of information and how it's come to us, to a point where the last meeting I said, enough is enough, we've got to stop this. Let's draw a line under all the who, she said, I said, what said, and let's really concentrate and focus on what is needed, and that is keeping the services that are provided at Orsett Hospital within Thurrock, preferably in integrated medical centres. That does keep moving on goalposts, but then we also have to recognise that we had a pandemic in the middle, that finances have changed around dealing and managing with COVID, that the lack of diagnosis has changed focus on what we need to do, and organically that will change, and that has to be looked at by the NHS, and we have to factor that into future demand. So it is going to be a moving goalpost, but I've been reassured by Tiffany that the focus is on services. When we know what the NHS England have got to say about the outline business cases, we'll be in a much better position then to understand how we take those IMCs forward. But until then, we need to know what we can do with these services within an ageing hospital that will at some point close, but not until those services have been relocated. It is an NHS-headed thing, as you know, because it's providing that healthcare. But Les and I, we work hand in hand with them, and we'll help drive this as much as we can. And I'll always be a thorn in someone's side, ticking, trying to get the best for Thurrock residents.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? Councillor Puffcarry.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the portfolio holder for the report. I would like to pick you up on what you just reply about the IMWCs, because that seemed to be a step away, or maybe a shuffle away from the idea that the council is pushing hammer and tongs for purpose-built buildings, which is what we were promised. And that was a promise that was trumpeted very, very loudly. And I don't particularly want to drag sort of party politics into it, but it was trumpeted very, very loudly by the portfolio holder. I understand that wasn't you, but by the portfolio holder at the time. It was trumpeted very loudly on Conservative Party literature that was put through people's doors, when residents were saying to me on doors, but I don't trust the government, I don't trust the local NHS bosses, I don't trust those people to deliver for IMWCs, I want to hold on to my hospital. This is the thing they were talking about, and they were accused of scaremongering. And I'm just slightly concerned that what you've just said there is falling into line with what the local NHS bosses would like us to now accept, which is that, well, it's okay, you're not going to get what you were promised, but we might be able to get some of the services in. And I'm really concerned about that. So could you just reiterate your personal commitment to getting 4 purpose-built integrated medical centres in the borough?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry if what I've said's made you think that isn't a focus. It is a focus. Those integrated medical centres were seen as vital to improve healthcare around the borough, to put the care services into. I get that. To attract GPs, I get that. Hopefully we're getting GPs. But I also am mindful that the most important thing over the brick of a building is improving healthcare and outcomes for this borough, and protecting those services and not losing those services that Allsett Hospital gave us, and retain them in Thurrock. And I mean, let's be real here with how long it's taking to get an outline business case to then go to a full business case if NHS England can approve the outline business case. To getting that building built, I can't see that being in, truthfully myself, I can't see it being in that original timescale that was given those years ago, not with everything that's happened. So for me, it's vital to make sure we get the services and improve health, and the buildings will come. That's how I'm seeing that, and that's, yes, I will still drive that. Yes, that's important. I wouldn't want to lose sight of that, but services and improving health for me are a priority.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for just restating that and clarifying that for me. My second question was about, and I'm aware this is not necessarily part of your portfolio, but it is going to have a big bearing on health and wellbeing in the borough. There's been significant proposed cuts to voluntary sector grants, and I would be interested to know what you're doing as the portfolio holder for health to make sure that organisations supporting, charitable organisations that currently are receiving that funding will possibly not be receiving that funding for much longer. The ones that are supporting particularly health and wellbeing in Thurrock residents are protected, and probably some of the organisations that come to mind are things like Thurrock Mind. I know we have contracts with them to do some stuff, but they do other stuff that's funded through other means, through the voluntary sector, and services like those absolutely crucial, critical services like CEREC.
Gosh, CEREC, we couldn't live without CEREC, could we? I do understand that. Yeah, for me, it's vital that we support the right services, and that those that fit with our health and wellbeing and our preventative and primary care within the strategy. And I don't think anyone doesn't recognise the importance of community and charitable organisations that help us provide that. They are vital. And potentially, I mean, we can't deny that the situation we're in financially might mean that there's some shortfall in funding. But Les and I were talking about this today, that there are other ways that we can support. We can support with maybe, for instance, free space to be able to provide that support within, or help support find funding from other means. Look at ways that we can joint fund maybe with the NHS. It's vital that the whole reason that on the bottom of every report it says the impact on equality is there to make sure that we can support that mechanism the best way we can. And I think if there's anything that local authorities are good at, it's providing stuff on a shoestring and thinking outside of the box for new ways to help.
Councillor Pothcary.
Thank you. That's encouraging to hear that those conversations are already being had, and that you're going to, you'll be a strong voice for organisations like that in terms of what could be some quite damaging kind of cuts, or potentially, sorry, that's probably an inflammatory phrase, but quite difficult and challenging cuts ahead. I do have a quick question, this might be one more for Les, around the section on hospital discharge, previously delayed discharges of care. I'm just a bit curious about 5.2, because it says that, and I understand fully that the national recording of that has stopped. I'm assuming we do still measure this though, and we are still, it says it's being monitored, and it says anecdotally we're doing really well. But as we all know, the plural of anecdote is not data, and it would be really good to actually, for a report like this, it would be really good to actually just have those figures which we can then benchmark against other local authorities where those figures are available.
Interestingly, it's not monitored in that way anymore. So the old method was called delayed transfers of care, DTOC, and the number was recorded, and people were fined if they didn't achieve certain performance indicators, and it was reported nationally. COVID stopped all that, and since that time there hasn't been a national performance indicator of that type put in place. But of course we know, and it's kind of a bit of a combination of anecdote and data. So we know how well we perform with respect to our neighbours. We know the amount of people that are delayed in hospital, because that information is shared regionally. But we haven't got the kind of reporting mechanism that we used to have, that we can just draw those figures off and say, here we are, we're laying 9th out of 11, or we're first, or whatever it is. So I think the way that Councillor Arnold captured it in her report is probably about the best we can do. Although, if there is specific information that you would want, we can certainly see if we can obtain that. But there's been a shift as well. So, and this is probably why the DTOC figures are not recorded in quite the same way. So we shifted during COVID from medically well to medically optimised, or medically fit to medically optimised. And it doesn't sound like a big shift, but it is. So this is saying that instead of saying this person's fit enough to go home or back to a residential care home or whatever, this is the judgment that is made is, does that person need to be in an acute setting, which is a very different judgment. And if they say, if the answer to that clinically is no, then those people are considered medically optimised and they are put forward for discharge. The impact on that is that we take people that are frailer than they were years ago in terms of being ready to be discharged. And it's led to an increase in complexity, and it's led to an increase in demand. We're managing it, and I think, in some regard it makes sense, because people, particularly when you had pandemic, shouldn't be in hospital for too long. But it has changed things. So I think there's the whole national performance indicator suite is being looked at. I imagine at some point, probably this year, there'll be a new performance framework brought out, and I'm pretty sure that it will contain some kind of national judgment about that, and we'd be able to report on that in the way we used to, but we can't at the moment.
Okay, thank you for the detailed explanation, Liz, because obviously we know how critical stopping delayed discharges in terms of both for individuals and for, you know, our hospital services. You know, there's shocking figures about, you know, nationally about how many people are in hospitals that just shouldn't be there. It's just not the appropriate place, and they don't need to be there anymore. And, you know, that there are then issues about space for people who would be better off in that sometimes. So I'm just kind of asking, is there a way to get more information? Because obviously we're not, it's difficult to just take this report's word for it, that everything's great in Thurrock. I know we have traditionally been very good at delayed discharge since the mid 2015. We've been very good at delayed discharge, but I'd really like more assurance than what this gives me. And you'll appreciate the context.
I'm not sure of a data set that we could show that in quite that way, but leave it with me. There's discharge funding been made available this year. That's being reported on. So there may be some data coming out of that we can show, but you'll have to take it on trust, but we are still pretty good.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pully.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to the portfolio holder and to Mr Billingham for the report and for coming to HOSC tonight and expo. So we're just picking up on Councillor Pottery's point there about the discharge, and I am fully aware that are they acutely unwell now? There has been a step change within the acutes, and especially within MSE because of the pressures that they've been under. The virtual wards, there is this, I understand there is a system now where they're not acutely unwell, they are being supported by virtual wards. Just wondering how transient it is then with us picking up the care. At what point do we hand over? Do we have any? Do the acutes just say this patient is now well enough for adult social care to take over their care, or do we have that dialogue as we would do from a hospital discharge? That's what I've got a list. We'll do one at a time if you want.
Yes, we took the decision to keep our hospital team in place, which wasn't done in most other local authorities. They pulled them out during the pandemic, and often they haven't gone back. That, I think, has allowed us to have a dialogue, as we used to, with the wards and with the clinicians. And I think it's allowed us to try and ensure that the people who are ready for discharge, we are aware of what it is that they need and we can meet that requirement. But it is harder because people are generally more frail than they would have been 2 years ago. So I don't think there's anything that's happening that we're concerned about from, say, a safeguarding point of view. You do get the occasional person come out that goes back in. You absolutely do, and some of that might be because the discharge was premature, but it's not endemic. But I would say the other thing, we tend to focus far too much on people being in hospital, and we don't focus enough on stopping them getting there in the first place. And that's exactly where a lot of our thought and attention and planning goes. It's infinitely better to avoid people going into hospital, not because hospitals aren't great places, they are, but you should only be in there if you really need to be. And we know from a lot of national studies, the figures somewhere between 25 and 40% of people who end up in hospital probably shouldn't be there in the first place. So if we could attack that better and get better at avoiding admission, it would be a whole lot better for everybody, including local authorities who are picking up the tab for the impact of that rise in demand caused by that change in discharge criteria.
Okay, can I just quickly jump in? I'd like to extend the meeting. So I'd like to move the motion without notice to suspend the council procedure rule 11.1 to allow the meeting to continue beyond the 2.5 hour time limit. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. You carry on.
Thank you, Les. And absolutely, hospital avoidance, and I was really pleased to see the multi-mobility clinics. Yeah, I'm a success of one of those in that I'm a reformed smoker through one of our, and it was a thorough cessation course that I attended. So absolutely, I might attend the weight management one at some point. And it's not, it's the quality of life that then that gives to as people age. You know, their mobilities, their joints, just to retain a lot of their independence. So they're fantastic. The micro enterprises that are allowing equality, diversity and inclusion. I think we can't chat loudly enough about how innovative that is. And again, focusing on people-centred care, allowing people to have a choice in the care that they receive. I would support Councillor Arnold's comments with regards to LACs. I think we're all going to claim that our LACs is the best in the team, but I have got an exceptional one over in the west there. But I want to also acknowledge the financial inclusion officers, because with the current climate, with the pressures that the people are under, you know, that mental strain can begin with, how do I pay my, do I turn the electric on, do I have my heating on? So the work there, I think the holistic approach that is being taken is something that is to be commended. We mentioned about health anxiety as well. I think we've seen a large increase on that. I was privileged enough recently to visit the new facility of St Luke's and speak there with some amazing therapists and support workers. We've mentioned the urgent rapid response care team, but we've got the first responses, but one response for the palliative care, and that are amazing. But I saw a new innovative project called WISH, which was Wellbeing Information Support Hub, which is being placed at the St Luke's Hospice. So I think there's some work that we're doing there with, you know, when people first get diagnosis and that, and again focusing on their health. So I think that might be something that we going forward we could have, perhaps invite St Luke's in at HOSC even to explain what they're doing. That's all the good stuff. The one thing that I have a concern about is the SENDs.
Councillor Blake, can I just say this is the portfolio holder's portfolio report, so the question should be directed to the portfolio holder.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise, sorry. So with SENDs, with Thurrock, which is a fantastic facility, we don't always have places there, or I'm having residents saying to me that they can't get their children into Thurrock. I know that's a sort of educational problem, but
yeah, we're kind of straying into children's directorate there. So I know you sort of like directed your question at Les, and he probably can help answer it better than I can. No, yeah, so I'll ask and get an answer for you, or perhaps you can make contact with Sheila.
oh, sorry, I thought we had, did we not cover the 14? I thought I saw something in the report referring
Just going to
to...
quickly bring Kim James in, because I don't know, you wanted to come in on an earlier comment?
Councillor's finished. It's all right. It's nothing to do. I wouldn't know the answer to that. This was just another question.
Right, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to come in about about the discharge from hospital. Actually, there is a commission service that runs through from CVS, comes paid for by from the Better Care Fund, which has been running for 5 years, and we support discharge from hospital. So it is they start off with welfare calls. So as soon as somebody comes home, the discharge team let us know everybody's 65 and over and frail or frailty, and they get a phone call to start with, and we do 6 weeks worth of visits, and it's about settling them in back home again. And we go in if they need equipment before they come home to allow them to come home. If they need a bed moved downstairs, we've got a handyman that we use through a micro that we do that. We fit key safes if they have nobody to do it, so that the carers can put a service in straight away, because sometimes it's not easy for them to access it. We provide food bank vouchers. We go and collect the food bank food for them if they need that. We've got access to a fund through, it's a hardship fund through the voluntary sector, so we can help with getting electricity and gas on and making sure that it's warm. And we also turn people around in A&E. So if they've been taken in by an ambulance because maybe they've fallen but they've not actually got any injuries, rather than admitting them, they come straight back out again, and we put in that support. We take over 250 referrals a month that we support. I've gone around and promoted this service to the Mid and South Essex, the ICB, and they are now funding every CVS for 5 months to trial this, to see if they can bring them out of all of the hospitals and not just Thurrock. So we are spreading it. We work with the local area coordinators, we work with the GPs, because sometimes they slip through, they get home and then there's a problem, so they can refer into us as well. But we call everybody. We've got a whole bank of volunteers that make welfare calls daily for 6 weeks for them. So just so you know, it's supported as well when they come out.
Thank you for that. Just to bring it back into Councillor Arnold with your report. Going forward on this, is there anything that you feel that you could have handled better going forward, or anything you'd like to achieve over the next few months with this? I mean, obviously, portfolio holder for this is a big task at the moment, not just with the intervention that we've had, but obviously coming out of a pandemic and the different changes that we're having within the council, how things are being run. Is there anything you'd like to add to it?
Yeah, funnily enough, I mean, again, Les and I have talked about areas that I want to gain more information on, and I recognise that mental health is an area that I haven't personally focused on within the portfolio in this last year. And as I sort of like look back, I'm quite remiss that I haven't done that focus, and so that's something that I will be taking forward. I think coming back to Councillor Polly, I think you're probably referring to the transition from young to adults, and yeah, again, I have actually seen where we've taken a house that is supported by our social care team, where young adults can receive extra help and support, not just from the adult team but from their peers as well, because they try and match them up so that they can support each other. But yeah, there's definitely a focus to be had around that, and it is something I'm very interested in actually, and would add that to the mental health side for me to gain more knowledge on, because after all, our children that need support with learning difficulties and disabilities are going to come into being adults and still need that care, and they still have dreams and aspirations. They still want to be employed and improve their skills and have independent living. So it's very important that we do gain focus on that, and I'll do that through the portfolio and through health and wellbeing for sure.
thank you very much for that, Councillor Arnold. And sometimes we have the looked after children in that category as well. And I just want to try and remember all 49 members that we are all corporate parents and we all have an obligation to these young people. Thank you.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, have no more questions? No? You sure, Councillor Puffkerry? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor, for your portfolio health update.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to come.
Okay, moving on now, we are going to do the work programme, then we've got an exempt piece to go on after that. So we're just going to quickly go through the work programme. What I'd suggest is that in the next year that we bring back Basildon Hospital to update us on their CQC reports, as we had the note to come out with their recent update on there. So if we can bring it back for next meeting, please. Councillor Arnold, you did mention about mental health. I would actually like to schedule something on the work programme for an update on the overview of the mental health within Thurrock. I don't know how you'd want to word that you can actually, unfortunately the Director of Public Health isn't here, that we can actually structure a comment to what we could put that in as.
Yeah, shall we take that on outside of this meeting so that you can carry on? But yeah, I'm more than happy to have a talk and let's see how we can do that.
Thank you. Does any of the committee have any other recommendations for the work programme? We do have quite a big work programme on there. Okay, thank you. We'll now be moving into an exempt section of the meeting, so I can ask the recording to be cleared. I do have to read out a statement.
Can I just clarify, the report is not exempt, so Catherine can present the report.
Oh, you can present the report and it's just the document, the discussion. Okay, so Catherine, would you like to present the report, please?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Chair. So this is a report about the Market Sustainability Plan. I'm briefly going to just outline why we're doing it and then just explain just explain what's actually in the report. So in 2021, as you will be aware, the government published the white paper, People at the Heart of Care, which set out to reform funding and delivery of adult social care. And there were 3 objectives within this paper: that people have more choice, control and support to live their lives as independently as possible, that they can access outstanding quality of care and tailored care and support to their individual needs, and people find adult social care fair and accessible. There are 4 key reforms within the document: a cap of £86,000 on what any individual can spend on their care in their lifetime, a more generous system of means testing for local authority financial support, and a move towards a fair cost of care established to support providers who offer that care. The final bit is the enactment of section 18.3 of the Care Act, which means that all individuals, including those who currently pay for their own care in full, can access local authority contracts and ask the local authority to arrange their care. Thurrock is not reflective of the national picture with this, because we already do that. Louise and her team already do that, and we offer any self-funders access to our contracts, and we will offer to arrange their care should they wish us to do that. So that's not one of the major risks that we have. The fair cost of care exercise specifically relates to undertaking of several tasks in order to meet grant conditions relating to the Market Sustainability and Fair Cost of Care Fund. The primary purpose of the fund is to support local authorities to move towards paying providers a fair cost for care and to prepare their markets for the adult social care reforms, which I've just mentioned. In order to be eligible for the funding, local authorities had to meet a set of requirements. One was to complete a cost of care table, based on provider submissions, obviously, which we have done. Collating a spend report, which includes a breakdown of how funding has been allocated to support various aspects of the care market. To produce a cost of care report that covers both care homes and domiciliary care and explains how that exercise was undertaken with providers, and we have done that. And also to produce a provisional market sustainability plan that describes how the local authority will ensure a sustainable market, deal with future risks, and move to bringing about a fair cost of care for providers. And again, we have done that in the plan that has been given to you. So the final market sustainability plan really links, I suppose, with my first report around domiciliary care and with Louisa's report around residential care. And the purpose of that plan is to assess and demonstrate how local markets are sustainable as we move forward with the reforms. Local authorities were very concerned about the fair cost of care process and the implications that it might have for challenge for local authorities. And as such, the LGA and ADAS requested King's Counsel legal advice about how to formulate plans, and all local authorities have followed that advice. So for us, the exercise identified a number of positives, and not least of those was something that we've all already mentioned, which is the quality of the care that is provided in Thurrock and the quality of our relationship as a local authority with our providers in the borough. However, we did also identify the risks which are detailed in the market sustainability plan. The risks are to the older people residential care market and to the domiciliary care markets. So that's the focus of the plan. We haven't, and that's what was requested from government. So our main risk is the recruitment and retention of the social care workforce, but also we do have a disproportionate use of top-ups to residential care, which was explained in the report that Louise gave. Being able to maintain a diversity in our provision, so ensuring that we have mixed sizes of homes, we have different provider types and different provider sizes. So again, I think going back to one of the questions around the concern of a big provider coming in and wanting to buy up homes, we're very clear that we've identified those risks, and as Les said, that would be very, very unlikely. The inability perhaps to use the data that we have collected through this exercise to identify a true fair cost of care. The residential care returns that we had were complete. Every residential provider did actually submit their returns for the fair cost of care exercise, and we received, though, a very low response from our domiciliary care providers, and those that did respond were not really representative of the providers in the borough. So in addition to this, providers also are facing other risks that we're all acutely aware of, particularly inflation pressures. And as such, we need to work with our providers using both the submissions of data that they gave us and the current realities that they face to create a much fairer and more appropriate way to define our fair cost of care here in Thurrock. In addition to our inflationary uplift, which has been referred to earlier in the meeting, we'll also utilise the grant funding that will come from government to address some of the risks that have been identified in the market sustainability plan. And we're working with providers, as you've heard already. We have a very close relationship with our providers to agree how we might use that funding. And actually, we have a history of being able to do that. I mean, certainly through the pandemic, we worked with our providers through the additional funding that we received to support them, and we worked very closely with them, and we will continue to do that. And the market sustainability plan itself is divided into 3 sections. One that actually assesses the current sustainability of the market, the second that assesses the impact of the market changes. So as I described at the beginning, and plans for how we will work with the market to address the sustainability issues, including any fee rates where they might be identified. And I think that's it if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. I just want to read out this. Exclusion of the public and press and members are asked to consider whether press and public should be excluded from the meeting during the consideration of the agenda item on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as specified in Part 1 of the Schedule of 12A, the Local Government Act 1972, it being confidential, the purpose proposed section of 100A bracket 2 in the Act. In each case, members are asked to decide whether the circumstances, the public interest is maintaining the exemption and discussing the matter in private outweighs the public interest of disclosing the information.
Sorry, Chair, could we just have a sort of slightly more plain English explanation as to why this would be exempt? Because I can't see anything in it that would be exempt.
Yeah, basically, because we're looking at costs of service providers, they may not be happy with us talking about how much they charge us compared to how they charge other people or anything like that. So it's just sensitive of their financial. It's not ours. So.
Okay, thank you.
Do you agree? Yep, agree. Okay, all right, thank you. We'll move into a private session.
If anybody did want to make a comment on the report that doesn't obviously go within the realms of the exempt appendix, that they wanted to be on public record, they would be able to do that now before we go into exempt. As long as it doesn't go into the exempt information.
Is that okay, Chair? Sorry, thank
That's
you.
fine, yeah.
Yeah, so before we go into the exempt session on the contents of the pink paper, I just had a question about section 2.5, Catherine. Thank you for the report, by the way, sorry. I just wanted an update on whether or not the government had given us any feedback on the draft. It says in here that at the time of preparing this report, the submission date has not been formally confirmed, but is believed to be the 31st of March. We were advised that we would receive feedback on the draft to help shape our final submission. No feedback has been received from government. So I suppose my questions are, firstly, it seems incredibly odd that there's a deadline that you're not being told what the deadline is. So I'm just wondering if that has been confirmed and if you have actually had any feedback, because obviously you've got very little time between kind of now and the 31st of March to incorporate that feedback. It seems disappointing that the government hasn't fulfilled that promise.
We haven't received any feedback yet. I don't think, I don't know if Les knows any different, but I don't think we've received any feedback. And my officer who wrote this report would have, I'm sure, briefed me if we had. And so, yes, you're right. The date is very close, but we haven't. So we would have to work on that if we get that in the time.
And sorry, has the 31st of March been confirmed as the deadline, or is that still...
No, that's what we're working to, but it hasn't been confirmed as the deadline, no.
That's pretty shoddy, isn't it, for you to be trying to jump through these hoops, and you haven't got... It's the 8th of March, you're working to a 31st of March deadline that hasn't even been confirmed, the feedback hasn't arrived. That must be incredibly difficult.
It is a challenge, yes, but we have shared our plans with the Eastern Region, each local authority, and actually the feedback we've had about ours has been very positive, that it is a very straightforward and good document that actually details what we're going to do. So I think, you know, we can be heartened by that. I mean, a review by peers is always very helpful.
Thank you, well, that's something.
Yep, we're ready. Cancel the recording for now. Stop it.